The following is a conversation with Tyrone Wilson. Tyrone Wilson is the founder, president and CEO of iCreate Limited. His vision is to develop the region's creative economy and make the Caribbean a powerhouse in the digital, tech and creative world. Tyrone became the youngest CEO on the Jamaican Stock Exchange when he listed his brainchild iCreate Institute, raising 70 million Jamaican dollars, which is roughly 540,000 US dollars. Tyrone is a recipient of many awards and accolades, including the Jamaica's Prime Minister's Youth Award for Excellence in Entrepreneurship, the private sector organization of Jamaica's 50 Under 50 Business Leaders Award, and the Caribbean Journal's Entrepreneur of the Year for the Caribbean. I believe that there are three main areas that are critical for the growth and development of every Caribbean country: access to financial and capital markets, clever implementation and use of technology, and access to quality education. This is the Simon Küpper podcast, and this is my conversation with Tyrone Wilson.
I'm Tyrone Wilson, founder and chief executive officer of iCreate Limited. We're a company established to, our sole mission is to power the creative economy. We started out with our first, what I would say, division of the company, which was our primary focus and still is, which is training. So that's called iCreate Institute. And, we went into that field really because of what we're seeing now in a COVID pandemic. It has always been my anticipation and assumption as an entrepreneur within the creative field that, digital is going to be very powerful over a few years. And when I started the parent of iCreate, which is eMedia, in 2008, my messaging has always been that digital is the future, and we need to, brands need to go online, brands need to, put digital marketing, advertising, tech as a part of their strategy and so forth. And, I started iCreate with that principle because I realized that there was a huge gap in terms of, just knowledge around digital, right? So forget being able to do strategies and campaigns or all of those things on digital. Let's just start with the basics. There was a huge gap in terms of just understanding digital, what I would call digital awareness. And so I started iCreate. Mostly we did some creative courses, advertising, graphic design, video production, project management for creatives, and animation, if I didn't say that before. And a few months later, we acquired the license from the Digital Marketing Institute out of Ireland to be the exclusive provider of digital marketing training, and that's as far back as 2017. And we experienced some quick and rapid growth in 2017, and it prompted me to, let's aim to capitalize this business properly. My method of capitalization, I chose the Jamaica Stock Exchange junior market, in which we raised $70 million. So, we chose that route because, in Jamaica, sometimes you don't get many options or opportunity to raise capital for a young startup. It does have a certain kind of expectation when they're giving you funding in businesses. And while you'll want, let's say, 100 million, they'll start you off with 10. And then that 10 million they use to judge everything, which is unfair to a lot of entrepreneurs. So I decided to go and raise all the capital at once. And we did that via the Jamaica Stock Exchange junior market. And, we just expanded iCreate, capitalized it properly, and started, training in more locations. Montego Bay here in Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. Since the pandemic, we have closed down pretty much all the locations and we're running digital.
So completely remote and completely online training right now. Okay. And I want to talk a little bit about your experience going the route with the Jamaican Stock Exchange. If I'm correctly, you have your earnings call tomorrow. Is that right? Well, not tomorrow when this episode gets released, but at least at the moment of the recording. Can you share some information about that, or do we have to wait till tomorrow? Or is there some indication that you can give how the pandemic influenced your business, and or how many free float of the business is there? Just some numbers so that people get some, I think some idea how a business in Jamaica that actually is listed on a stock exchange operates.
Yeah, well, we're one of the smallest companies on the stock exchange in terms of capitalization. We're also one of the smallest in terms of profits, because we came on the market as a startup.
Mm-hmm.
So like some of the other companies who chose to list after experiencing 5-10 years of robust growth, we chose to list almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And find is that you are growing in front of everybody, right? You have to put out your results each quarter and so forth. And as a startup, you have growing pains, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a in terms of turnovers, culture, in terms of stability and so forth. And you have to, what you find with a company like iCreate is that you have to play that out in front of everybody to see because you're publicly listed, right?
Right.
So we decided to do our earnings call. It has always been something that I wanted to do the minute I listed iCreate, because I knew that not a lot, very few companies list immediately. There was one startup before us that was called C2W Music, and they have since folded, rebranded into a different type of venture capital company. They struggled on the market also. So investors were a bit wary of another startup coming on the market. We were successful in our IPO in raising the capital, did so in 24 hours. And, as I say, for me, an earnings call is critical for a company like iCreate. You're new, you're a startup, there's not much history. You want to ensure that your investors are made aware of all that you're doing, each quarter in the company. So if a performance is out, if your quarterly report is out, whether good or bad, you want to speak to them about that so that they can understand as a leader, as a lead for the company, the CEO and so forth, where your mindset is, how you feel about the performance, what to expect, right? Are critical. And I have a banking and finance background in terms of what I've studied, and I'm a student of entrepreneurship and so forth. And one thing I can tell you, communication is critical, whether the information is not pleasing or exciting information, right? So we are doing our earnings call, and that's the whole purpose, guys. This is what we've done. Thankfully for this earnings call, we have good news because we increased our profit about 59%. And during a pandemic period, we've been able to remain profitable and turn around the company, because we've had a very tough start since we've listed a lot of losses and so forth. And since 2020, we have been turning things around in the middle of a pandemic. So regardless of what the size of the revenues are and so forth, I've said to my board and our shareholders, and I will say this through the earnings call, the main mission right now is survival. We have to get past this pandemic. We have to ensure that the minute this pandemic is gone, we're still here to help Jamaica and the region move forward. And that is using the creative economy as a catalyst for growth. So, that's my kind of thinking in terms of our earnings call, and, just being the CEO of a startup on the stock exchange.
What would you say, or what would be your take rather, what would you recommend to someone that is thinking of taking the company public? Because I think both has the pros and cons. If you're completely private, you can make decisions that are maybe more long-term and do not result in profit immediately for the shareholders. You are also not so, as you do not have to be so transparent. You maybe can make decisions differently. On the other hand, when you're publicly, you have maybe more and better access to money to grow for your company. On the other hand, you will have to report to the board, to the shareholders. You, on the other hand, also get support and advice through the board, etc. So looking back, would you say it is the right decision to go public? Or maybe you can dive a little bit there. What is your take on that? Meaning, taking a company public or going completely private, especially as you mentioned, when you are a startup in the beginning of the company's life, basically.
Yeah, that's a good one, Simon. I think one of the best indicators of a country that is moving in the right direction economically is a robust stock market, right? It's a stock market that and a business atmosphere that encourages an appetite for risk. It's a business atmosphere that promotes the spirit of entrepreneurship, and a business environment that encourages entrepreneurs to create wealth, right? Those are some critical indicators in terms of economic growth. The more entrepreneurs are, the more people are out there creating ideas, creating businesses, employing people, paying taxes, back from perspective and so forth. That will accelerate the growth of any economy, right? And when we listed iCreate, there were a lot of people that had, their own opinions on, we were too early to list. We should have waited, grow some more privately. But being on the stock exchange enables you to grow much faster as a leader, as an entrepreneur, and as a business. And, we chose this route because it's a legal route also to raise capital. It's allowed. And I would encourage any entrepreneur, whether they're just at a startup, if they're very, very bullish about the business and so forth, they should consider listing on the stock exchange as an option to raise equity. A stock exchange, a robust one, is also a very diverse one, meaning there are companies of all size, entrepreneurs of all color, background, and so forth. Those are strong indicators of a mature stock market, a mature economy also. And my view is that I would encourage a lot of entrepreneurs to consider that route because it exists and it helps us to appreciate a diversity in terms of capital, in terms of where the money is. So when someone reads our prospectus, for example, they would see that iCreate is not going to make $100 million profits next month or next year or 3 years after. It's going to make 30 or 40. And what this means for that entrepreneur is that I'm in this for the long run, right? So people invest for different reasons. iCreate as a company on the stock exchange is someone who believes in the power of a creative economy and feel as if this vehicle is a good one for them to invest in and be a part of. Since we've kind of changed a lot of things last year, coming, the beginning of the pandemic and moving forward, we've changed our management team. Our board was changed as a result of some resignations and so forth. The build up of the board was changed, and just our management of the company during the pandemic. Our stock price has been up like 40% since the beginning of the year, right?
Okay.
that is real wealth being created for individuals. Someone who bought at 50 cents to now 85 cents or whatever it is, you know, would have created some wealth for themselves right there. So, you know, that is critical in an economy. You know, diversity in terms of how you raise capital, where you raise capital, who invests, and what your business is, and so forth. So, you know, I'm very happy that we chose that route for iCreate. It has done well for our brand. You know, being publicly listed, it enabled a lot of trust with our clients, students that come to our door, that came to our door, and so forth. And you know, any young entrepreneur out there thinking of this route is something that I would heavily encourage.
Would you, or in your experience, would you recommend go that route compared to debt financing through a bank, meaning go to a bank and ask for a credit, a loan, startup loan, something like that? Or is that, in your experience, even possible for a startup in Jamaica?
I would not recommend any entrepreneur to get a loan as the first financing route, right? On top of it being difficult to get, as a startup business, it's not the most prudent decision just based on it's a startup. You don't know where you're going, where the business will end up because, you know, you're just building up. So taking on that responsibility of monthly interest payment, principal payment, default, and so forth. And even sometimes the reporting requirements to the bank. If you don't have that kind of capacity,
True.
not recommend that in general. I do also think that we have a very, our economy is getting, I would say, the idea of venture capital, the idea of private equity, seed financing, you know, it's slowly getting a bit more mainstream. And individuals are considering it. When I was starting up in 2008, there wasn't such a very active venture capital ecosystem. You know, I had to go and knock on doors myself, and create connections and nurture connections to get the capital that I needed to grow the business. Now it has, you know, it has grown a lot more in terms of maturity, and you know, there are many different options out there for a young startup to get financing, equity financing too, right? Investment companies are more cultured just based on what has been happening over the last few years, to considering businesses that are startups, to invest in them early, invest in the entrepreneurs, and so forth. And I think that you know, there's a space out there privately that individuals can raise funds also. I'm not saying the iCreate route is the only route that someone should consider, you know, because our route typically, a startup company does not take that route. Let's take some early financing, take some time and grow, and so forth. But I'm saying if there's an entrepreneur out there that's considering that, I would like to go that route of public market. They believe in the idea and they can get some anchor investors that believe in the idea and board members too. It's something that they should also consider. They shouldn't be afraid to it's a tougher one. You're more exposed, but it still is very rewarding.
Yeah, I think I'm absolutely with you when you said earlier that I think one of the backbones for a working economy is working stock market on the one hand for the companies to raise capital, but also on the other hand for the public to basically be able to invest and support companies where they see fit and potential. So I'm absolutely agree here. Can you take a little or talk a little bit about the revenue model of iCreate, or why, or rather, where do you see I don't want to call it the future of education, that sounds a little big, but I think the pandemic showed the limitations of the current education system that we have in general, I think. It also shows that we globally need different skilled workers, different skilled people than we maybe needed 20, 30 years ago. And the question is, are we actually, or are our schools, is our education system equipped to actually do that? So you said earlier on that right now you're primarily focusing on training. So I'm assuming that's for professionals and individuals. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that, what your viewpoint is right now, and maybe where you see the future or the trends in the education space.
Yeah, I think COVID-19 has pretty much showed up the vulnerabilities of our education system across the world, right?
Yeah.
Not just here in Jamaica, but
Right.
everywhere. Not just from our infrastructure in education or lack thereof, physical infrastructure, but also the technological infrastructure, and three, what we've been teaching people, right? And how would they impact the world? The pandemic pretty much caused a digital revolution to be accelerated. It accelerated the fourth industrial revolution, right? Which is all about digital.
Yeah.
It's all about artificial intelligence. It's all about automation, 5G and so forth, right?
Yeah.
A lot of businesses struggled in terms of e-commerce, in terms of digital, specifically communication with a remote team, communication with customers that can no longer come into your location, right? What are the different systems that you would use to manage those requests that would come in now, not over the phone, but via email or through your online portals, right?
Right.
And what I mean is that these are things that we have been saying at iCreate and eMedia for a long time, that the world is changing and we have to get our workforce ready, right? And it's not just the typical workforce in terms of the corporate workforce, but also our teachers, right? We are unable to train and educate the general population in secondary, tertiary, and primary school now, because we had a very outdated way of teaching. There wasn't much belief in online learning, in remote learning, right? And as a result, the technological infrastructure was not invested in. So when the pandemic came, we were all scrambling. And it's not just Jamaica, right? It's all of the Caribbean, parts of Latin America. It's all over, right? And we dealt with the younger kids as if digital devices were a bad thing. And this is what they're now learning from, the tablets and so forth, because they can't go in classes. And we don't have the online education portals that are necessary. Even when Google Classroom was available in parts of the US from 5-6 years ago, it just wasn't available here in Jamaica. Now they're making it available. So even big companies like Google were to be blamed on what has been happening in terms of like even education, right? Because they had this platform and it was mostly available to first world countries, while it's way more necessary in developing countries.
Right.
And governments, private sector, we just weren't prepared. And for iCreate, our model is simple, that we are training people for the future. So today it's post-COVID-19, tomorrow it's post-COVID-20, it's post whatever.
Right. That's true.
We are invested in anticipating what the future will be like, investing in that now, and train and educate, upskill, reskill people to be able to exist in that professional world whenever it comes. So we are not invested on teaching the things that are relevant now, but the things that will be relevant tomorrow. That's what iCreate is about. And we feel as if, you know, individuals, I think a little before this, they probably didn't see it, but they've seen it now, where the things that they thought they needed tomorrow, they needed it now, right? But there were still educational content of the future. Some you might need, you know, right now, but majority of it, you're advancing yourself as a professional to be what I would say COVID proof, right? So with iCreate, people pay per programs or revenue model. You know, you feel you want to learn digital marketing today, you log on, you pay iCreate, you start learning immediately, you get your certification after your online exam, and so forth. And we have shorter workshop programs and so forth. Corporate companies work a lot with us. We recently got selected for year 2 of the NCD Level Up Grant Program, National Commercial Bank Foundation, largest financial institution here in Jamaica, where they're investing, you know, to give individuals training in digital. And they've selected iCreate as one of 2 of their partners, along with Internet Income Jamaica. And that again underscore the importance of a business such as iCreate in our society today, right? We've been working with a number of corporate companies, you know, government organizations like the Jamaica Tourist Board, Unicomma in St. Lucia, you know, you name it. We've been working with several entities who have either paid us to train their staff in groups or sent their staff to train with iCreate on an individual basis and so forth. So the pandemic has, you know, pushed the relevance of iCreate faster than we would have expected us to, you know, gain our relevance in the space, and just continuing to invest in building that out.
What or do you see efforts from the public space, meaning from the government or from the educational sector in that area? Because you pretty much saying what most people I talk to are saying, meaning there's a lack of devices for the people or for the children that need it the most. There's a lack of infrastructure, just saying there's not a stable enough internet connection in all areas of the Caribbean, all areas of Jamaica. So where do you see any progress, any effort from the public side, from the government in the Caribbean in general, or more specifically in Jamaica, or is it primarily private companies, the private sector, that actually pushes in that direction and actually provides these kind of offers for, as in your case, training for professionals in that space?
I think there's a coordinated and collaborative push amongst government, private sector to navigate the challenges that were brought on. Let's not say brought on, but the challenges that were accelerated as a result of the pandemic, right? Truth is, these would have been problems that we would have faced regardless, maybe 5 years later, right? Maybe 3 years later.
That's true, yeah.
While I see that, you know, a lot of effort is being made in terms of ensuring that we continue to keep our workforce going, to have our students going to school, there is still a huge fallout as a result of us not being proactive before the pandemic, right? And I mean, when you look at the rural areas in Jamaica, and I would say anywhere else in Caribbean and Latin America, those are the ones that are being upended more than ever, right? Because they don't have access to stable internet connection and so forth. Technology is slower to reach some parts of the country, and the students aren't going to school, right? 30-40%, if not more, haven't been showing up in terms of secondary schools and so forth. And while here in Kingston, it's a more progressive part of Jamaica, internet connection is good and so forth. There are parts of Jamaica where, you know, 2 years from now, those individuals will feel the pain more than anybody else in terms of the fallout. And I think we're too comfortable with doing the basic, the bare minimum as a country, right? We're too comfortable with just thinking that, you know, that is, it's important. We have an online learning portal, Google Classroom, and that's fine. They access it, right? We started a communication maybe 10 years ago to encourage businesses to make public more Wi-Fi access for individuals in communities, in schools and so forth. And, we're still not there, right? We treat internet like something of a luxury, internet access like something of a luxury when it's a necessity. It's a public good at this point. So we have to be a lot more forward thinking if, the world has changed, and we have to ensure that we're not left behind as a country and as a region, right? And as a result, we have to continue. And that's what we're doing with iCreate. We're launching out a new program where it's called, probably the first we're saying this publicly, but it's a digital awareness program. Simon, we're looking to train 5,000 to 10,000 people free of cost in digital awareness, right? That is just understanding digital as an individual and coexisting in a digital fourth industrial revolution world, right? And that's our part. We're playing our part where that is concerned. We have quite a few government and private sector companies on board with that. But, we have to continue to do this. We don't want to do it for 10,000. We want to do it for 100,000, 500,000. We want to do it throughout the Caribbean. We want to do it throughout Latin America. And these things are critical because there's no turning back. There's no going back to a pre-COVID-19 world. This is the new reality, and we have to ensure that all our workforce are digital citizens that understand what that means from a personal relationship standpoint, using social media for your personal life, or in the professional world.
I absolutely agree. When you say digital awareness, does that mean like kind of fundamental crash course to give people an understanding how more the business application of social media looks like? Or maybe you can tell one or two more sentences about what your goal is with that broad approach, because I think it's necessary, as you said, to lay the groundwork, basically.
It is. It's digital awareness from both perspectives. It's digital awareness as a business, and digital awareness as a consumer, or just an individual interacting with friends. What are the different social media channels? Understanding e-commerce, understanding data privacy, GDPR, things like that. That's what we'll be doing, because every single individual now opening up a browser, visiting a website, will see something pop up about cookies, and they don't understand what hacking and cookies mean. So they end up signing all their data again when that has been because of the rules, right? But they're not aware. People don't know. They just go on it and they click allow cookies. And some websites default are set to share your information with third party. The same thing that we've been trying to avoid, right? So our digital awareness program is for both the business and the user, or the private citizen. just to understand digital all around, you know, and privacy and data security and those things.
So you could also call it a digital literacy program, maybe, to give. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I think that's absolutely important, because I think everybody, no matter if it's business or private, gets in touch with that technology. And although, for example, online banking isn't not that developed in Jamaica, that will come. Then you need to know how to handle that, security, all these kind of things that you just mentioned. Where do you think, or let me rephrase the question, what do you think should be a field or an area someone that is embarking the working life or the career journey, or however you want to call it, right now, what kind of fields and what kind of area do you think it makes the most sense for someone in the Caribbean, for someone in Jamaica right now, to start out? So meaning, let's assume I have a 20-year-old, fresh out of college, fresh done with school, whatever, and the person says, okay, I see the trends, I see the future, I know that I need digital skills, but I don't know, do I need to go into digital marketing or AI or programming or blockchain or project management, or I don't know what, or I don't know, graphic design? What would be, I know it's a very broad question, but what would be the areas you would recommend that are kind of future proof, or that you would recommend someone that is a young person today?
Digital is so diverse now, it's difficult to say, you know, do this specifically or start with this. But like from iCreate's perspective, we have our flagship certified digital marketing professional course, which is through the Digital Marketing Institute. And even though they call it digital marketing professional, it's so much more. You know, it looks at strategy, it looks at data analytics, it looks at you know, pay-per-click search, and it's more than digital marketing, because it helps so much with even digital strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So what I find is that if you approach digital from a strategy perspective, I think you'll be effective in specializing in any other area moving forward. So any program that gives you an idea of how to approach digital as a professional in terms of building out budgets and plans and people strategy and so forth is probably the best to start out with. That's what I would recommend.
Okay, so you would rather go from a approach where you acquire business and organizational skills in the digital space, rather than saying, okay, learn graphic design or animation or Photoshop or something in that area. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, it depends on the individual. What I would recommend for those who, because we have a lot of, you know, creatives,
Mm-hmm.
people do photography, graphic design, all of those.
Right.
We recommend to them that they pair that with some form of digital skills,
mm-hmm.
because, you know, that's where it's at now, right? Every single piece of content that you're creating, a content creator, is going to exist on some digital platform. So you have to understand, how do you earn from it? How do you market it? How do you engage viewers or audiences? How do you measure success? You know, things like that. So there's always a need for that understanding around digital strategy.
So where can people find you or your company when they say, that sounds good, I want to learn more, I understand that I need to upskill, or I'm at the beginning of my career and want to make sure I get the right skills? Where can people find you and your company?
Well, definitely starting point is our website, iCreateEDU.com. And then everything on the digital platforms, iCreateEDU for Instagram, iCreateEDU for Twitter, and same LinkedIn.com/iCreateEDU.
Perfect. And of course, everybody listening or watching, we will also put the links in the show notes to make it easy for you guys. to get there. So first of all, thank you very much for your time and for the insight in your business. Anything else you want to talk about, you want to touch on that I maybe didn't touch on so far?
No, thanks, Simon, for inviting me to be a guest. I think these programs are critical, and I hope people will get some knowledge out of it, I'm sure. So I appreciate the invite.
Thank you for listening to this conversation with Tyrone Wilson. I appreciate it and hope to see you next time.